Welcome back to the Live Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. My dear friend, Melody Schoenfeld, it's so good to see you again. Well, we were actually hanging out together in Las Vegas at the Olympia.
Yeah, that was fun.
We had dinner in a blackout restaurant where we
That
actually
was so cool.
Yeah, like if I had no idea what we were going into. I guess the waitress actually walked us through. We had to put hands on each other's shoulders. We walked in, total blackout, couldn't see anything, and you're tasting. The only sense you really is like hearing and tasting. So
Yeah,
that was fascinating.
it was. Did you feel like it enhanced your sense of taste?
I think it's weird. It's kind of like if you can't see what's in a box, you put your hand in, and whether it's squishy or it might be a rabbit or God only knows what, right? So it's like, I don't know what this is going to be, but it was like, okay, I don't think they're going to feed us poison. So, and it was actually quite wonderful.
Right? It was so good. Yeah.
So for everybody who's not excessively familiar with you, you have a master's of health psychology. You're the author of a number of books, including Strength Training for All Body Types with our good friend Lee Boyce, the author of Diet Lies and Weight Loss Truths. You're a gym owner, a nutrition coach for Macros Inc., a strength athlete, a medal singer. You're the 2019 award winner of the Personal Trainer of the Year for NSCA. And you actually spoke at my 2023 Evolve Strength Business and Coaching Conference. And you speak at a lot of other stuff, a lot of NSCA stuff, CanFit Pro. So hit the resume. Great to have you back.
Oh, and pleasure not meeting you. I wrote that one too.
That's right. Pleasure not meeting you.
I've got to talk about them all. I mean, if we're going to talk about them.
And that's actually the theme. So we're going to go kind of into a lot of vegan myths, vegan nutrition. So myth number one, there's no such thing as a healthy vegan. What are the common arguments about vegan nutrition not being healthy?
There's a lot. One of them is that vegans tend to be weak, which, I mean, obviously I'm super weak. So, any right there. That's, I think that's the big one. The term they throw around, soy boy, that generally implies that it's somebody who eats a lot of soybeans, and there's this whole thing now where it's like a very red meat, alpha male, kind of world right now. And eating plants is akin to being some kind of a pussy, and for lack of a better term. And yeah, so that's been thrown around. I've gotten in don't get in internet arguments. It's not a good idea. But I have unfortunately been drawn into some internet arguments where when I'm in, if I get drawn into something, I come with very calm and hey, actually that's not true. Here's some facts. Here's my sources that I'm going to back those facts up. And inevitably they're like, yeah, well, you're wrong. Okay. What can I tell you?
You've won when that devolves into that.
Yeah.
So now, are there potential pitfalls with, vegan nutrition, like things that people actually have to be conscientious of?
Look, anytime you cut a major food group out of your diet, you have to replicate what that food group gives you, right? Plants are not muscle meat. They're a different thing. And while they do contain protein and they do contain lots of nutrients and things like that, and there's a lot of health benefits to having a plant-based diet, you're going to probably need to supplement if you go full vegan, right? Even if you go vegetarian, you may need to supplement. Even though you're still eating, milk and eggs, there's some things you may still need to supplement. A big one for vegans, and people probably, this is the one that most people know, is B12.
Okay.
There is no non-animal B12 source, with the exception of nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast, when you eat it, your pee turns bright neon yellow. It's all that B12, right? B12 is one that we need to either get through supplemental nutrition, either foods that are enhanced with B12 or through some sort of a supplement.
That would have been really fun at the bathrooms at that blackout restaurant. Actually, that was one of the things we joked about, is getting to the washroom would have been horrifying.
Would have been fun. Yeah, that would have been I guess we would have had to follow the waitress into the restaurant.
That sounds terrible, right? Yeah, hard pass on that. Okay, see. Yeah.
By the way, if I'm stumbling over my words, I apologize. I'm very underslept right now.
Yeah, you just came back from a conference in New Zealand, right?
No, I'm about to go, but I
Oh,
just sleep like garbage. So
okay.
yeah.
Any other key boxes besides B12 that you really want someone who's really thinking about plant-based nutrition, veganism, or maybe coaches who deal with them?
Yeah, actually, DHA and EPA is one that people don't think about a whole lot. People tell you to eat fish oil.
Mm,
Fish actually is a middleman for DHA and EPA. They get it from eating algae.
okay.
And so algae is actually the source of the DHA and EPA that you find in fish. That is where I get mine from. But it's not like you're sitting there eating algae. And so you do have to get it from a supplement. It's important for cardiovascular health, brain function, eye health, immune function. There's even some evidence that it helps with bone health.
Mm,
It's anti-inflammatory, can help with vision. So there's a lot of different recommendations for it, you know,
mm,
and there are some caveats where, like, if you have a bleeding disorder or something like that, you may not want to take, extra DHA EPA.
mm,
So that's something you would want to talk to your doctor about. But I take a pretty high concentration. The vegan options don't tend to be very high
mm,
in DHA or EPA. And so I will either, like, if it's like the pills, I usually double or triple the dose that that they recommend. They usually, it's like take 1 or 2. I usually take 4. But I also found a liquid DHA made from algae that I take that's a much higher concentration. It's like 1,000. So that's the one I go with. But yeah, very very important, and we don't get that in our diets, so we do have to supplement that. Another one I think people associate with the vegetarian diet, but it's not necessarily something that corresponds with the vegetarian diet, is anemia, a lack of iron.
mm.
It doesn't necessarily take a vegetarian diet to cause anemia, and I have never had anemia. And I'm not, like, really going out of my way to eat iron, but the fact of the matter is that plant-based diet, the iron sources are a little harder to absorb than
Mm,
in an animal-based diet. And so there and this is a tricky one because there there are so many factors that go into the absorption of iron, and they haven't really, like, figured out specifically what a vegetarian or a vegan might need. As like, there's not like a hard and fast rule for that. And there are things that can interfere with absorption. Like, if you're not having a vitamin C source with your iron source, you won't absorb it as well. That's one thing that you do need. If you're not eating a lot of irons, like, a lot of vegans don't eat a lot of iron sources, and so that's another one. And then I had another brilliant thought, and it just looked right out my
mm.
ear. But I'll if I think of it, I'll come back to it.
Are there any, so what are the best plant-based sources of iron then? The ones that sometimes some vegans don't eat much of?
Big ones are green vegetables, a lot of legumes like lentils, things like that. Those are really good. Some certain nuts have a lot of iron in them. I personally don't eat nuts, and it's not for any um, preference. It's just that I'm a very, very small person, and I really like food, and nuts are very calorically dense. And if I eat a lot of
Mm.
nuts, I don't get to eat a lot of other food. I'm not actively trying to lose or gain weight, but like, I don't want to eat something that's super high in calories because that's going to limit how much else I can eat in my day. So I just don't eat a lot of nuts.
Mm. A quick side quest. This episode is sponsored by Macros First, the nutrition app I use for myself and my clients. I don't believe everybody needs a track all the time, but just knowing how many calories are in the food you eat helps with a bunch of things. One, if you're used to restricting, you realize just how much nutritious food you need to eat to fuel yourself. Two, then you realize you have the room for your favorite treats without guilt and shame. Three, realize just how many calories you're eating when you consume a lot of ultra-processed junk food and alcohol. Four, rein in your portion sizes. And five, see just how much snacking you're doing. Your baseline nutrition will improve. My favorite features are the free barcode scanner. The app is easy to use, and you can build and save meals for faster logging. You can also get an extended free trial of the premium version for 14 days and check out a bunch of the cool added features, like check your nutrition trends over time. You can chart your patterns and averages instead of seeing your days in isolation. To get your free premium trial, download Macros First, and during setup, you'll be asked, how did you hear about us? Type in the code, Andrew. What about, we now see a lot of right, let's call them crazy claims in support of carnivore
Mhm.
dieting, and sometimes they make claims that are negative about plant-based nutrition. Obviously,
Yeah.
plant toxins being kind of one of them, but
Yeah,
this stuff is also entering a lot of the mainstream conscience. So
it is.
anything to proactively refute some of the more batshit claims. I mean, obviously, things like that LDL cholesterol doesn't matter when in fact that's probably one of the biggest risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think this stuff has come out of defiance rather than science. That rhymed. I didn't try that.
Mm,
I think it's come out of like, oh, we are becoming a demasculated world because we're not eating as much meat. So let's go in the other direction and be super manly and just eat, just grab a cow off the field and take a bite. I think it's just like gone the other way. And now we're gonna try to, and I feel like there's also this whole thing where making things very complicated or very extreme sells product.
mm,
So, and I will fault the vegans on this as well. Like vegans have skin in the game when they throw out these documentaries and these books. A lot of it, look, there's a grain of truth in everything, and not
mm,
everything that they say is bullshit, but at the same time, they're trying to sell you a dogma.
mm,
They want you to do what they are doing. Um, with the carnivore diet, it's like this is gonna sell my product, my supplements, my books, my stuff, right? Because it's super extreme and manly and so they attract a huge number of people who also want to be super extreme and manly. And it's funny because isn't the dude who was pushing that like now saying, oh, this caused me a lot of health problems?
So if that's what's his name, Paul Saladino,
Yeah,
please
yeah.
not to be confused with my good friend Don Saladino. I'm not aware of any
Totally
relationship
different
there.
guy.
Don,
I love
Don is
Don.
fantastic,
Love me some.
but I think Paul has. I don't know his specific claims. I think he's come out, and I think there's always the Liver King, who I think was his business partner, and this guy's claiming that organ meat and
Yeah,
lots of sunshine and clearly
yeah,
doesn't shower is the
yeah.
way to look like this guy. I mean, two thoughts. Number one is I can't
Took a
imagine
lot of
anybody
steroids. Take a lot of
who
steroids. Well, look at like that.
it turns out it was over $10,000 a month in steroids,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I don't want to look like him.
No.
He looks like a sunburnt caveman. I'm sorry, I'm not into that, right? And that's
Yeah.
an ad hominem, but guess what? Fair game. The guy's a scumball. I'll say it on air.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I know that Paul Saladino is one of the people among many who makes a lot of these dubious claims about, plant-based nutrition in various forms being unhealthy, right? So,
Mhm.
and I understand why people are misled by this stuff.
Sure. Like he goes literally into supermarkets and pulls things off shelves and says, "This is gonna kill you." I'm like, well, I'm still alive. But yeah. I mean, I think extreme thought processes, extreme diets, extreme, complicated things, because everybody wants the magic pill, right?
Mm,
Everybody wants to believe that if I just do this diet or I just cut out this thing, my life is going to be so much better. And so they prey on that mindset. And I think there's also like some degree of privilege to be able to cut out anything in your diet. Like there's a
mm,
degree of privilege there because you have to have money to do what he's doing. You probably have to have
mm,
money to do what I'm doing
mm.
healthfully, to
Yeah.
do it right.
And I won't go near the political side of this stuff, but I mean, as of the time of recording, I know there's this big contentious thing over SNAP benefits in the US. I'm Canadian, so I don't understand the full degree of it all. But I'm sure a lot of those people aren't necessarily in a position to be able to go, well, hey, I want to go live a vegan lifestyle based on their food access and the resources.
Yeah, unfortunately, for a lot of people who live in food deserts, getting fresh vegetables, and kind of healthier food options is not something they can do, and it's
Mm,
unfortunate. And I know there are organizations that are making a concerted effort to change that. Like there are people who are making these urban farms. There are people who are coming around with like trucks that carry produce to cater
mm,
to those areas. But produce tends to be more expensive. So does meat. Meat tends to be more expensive. And so, people who are relying on a very limited budget have to really pick and choose what they eat. And a lot of times that ends up being things that are detrimental to their health. It's unfortunate that it's really a problem.
And I know one of the moral arguments, if you want to call it moral on one side, they'll wave around the outliers. Some of the people who are, let's just say, they're pretty obese, and these people are on SNAP, and then they're making the argument that, well, these people really aren't starving. Well, the problem, as you just said, A, their food options aren't necessarily great. So they're probably consuming a relatively low nutrient diet, but that's hypercaloric. But
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean that they're you know, they're not starving. They're certainly probably not getting great nutrition. And
Yeah.
there's all sorts of other environmental and lifestyle factors. I mean, it's probably challenging given the circumstance of the environment to actually live a pretty active lifestyle, a lot of walking. We don't know what kind of
Yeah.
areas they live in. It may not sit, let's say a woman, right, who's probably working, well, maybe they're working like, whatever hours or maybe even two jobs. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's like, well, her time to do something physically active is in the evening. And maybe it's not safe to go walking around at night. And I don't want to deal in stereotypes. We also know this is the reality for some people.
It is, absolutely, and there's a lot of really interesting studies on the power of green spaces
Mm,
and mental health, and people without access to green spaces tend to suffer with depression and anxiety more. And if you're living in a place where you can't get outside and get fresh air and walk around, that's going to affect your mental health. And when you're depressed, if you've ever dealt with depression, you don't want to get out of bed. It's really hard to make yourself physically active when you're dealing with mental health issues. So there's so many factors. I mean, so many factors, and it's really um, problematic that people jump to judge like that.
mm. I want to bring it back to some of the risks of some of these deficiencies. So, what are some of the things that actually show up in some vegan populations, especially if they're not getting enough of certain nutrients? And there's also, I don't know if there's genuine evidence to back this, but something to do with like even mental health outcomes and vegans. What's going on there?
Interestingly, there I just looked at a study about this. So there are a few studies that have shown that replacing animal proteins with plant proteins actually seems to have a benefit for mental health and healthy aging.
Mm,
Um, so that's interesting. And I think that that's also going to be very dependent on what plant-based what your diet looks like. But people who switch to plant-based diets also tend to eat healthier foods and tend to have healthier lifestyles. So I think there are so many when you're not
mm,
in a lab only looking at one thing, people who eat more whole grains tend to be healthier. But then also if you're eating more whole grains, you're probably doing a lot of other things that are healthier. So there's all of these aspects that go into lifestyle. You're probably less likely to be drinking a lot of alcohol. You're probably more likely to be physically active. And all of these things do play a role in mental health as well. So, mhm.
I want to tread carefully here. Is there a user bias in potentially the type of person who gravitates towards, not as a stereotype, but maybe a bias, the person who gravitates towards wanting to do vegan nutrition for ethical reasons? There may also be, mental health risks there. I don't know if there's any data on that or not. So,
If there is, that's not something I have looked into. I've met a lot of vegans who have some mental health issues, but I've
mm,
also met a lot of people who are not vegan who have mental health. Like, I don't know that there's
mm,
more vegans than not. Um, look, as someone who doesn't push my lifestyle on other people, like to me, it's like a religion, right? Like, you don't need to believe what I believe. Right? What I believe is very important to me. I understand that what I believe is probably not going to be important to everybody. Um, my experience in the vegan world, and there are reasons why I don't have a lot of vegan friends. My experience in the vegan world is that there's a lot of judgmental stuff happening there. You
mm,
can never be vegan enough. Like
mm.
I've gotten in trouble for not having been vegan my entire life. I have ridden a horse before. Just kind of crazy things like that. Um, where like people will continue to judge, and you will never be good enough for certain people. You're not vegan enough. And it's crazy to me. It's like I'm like doing what is important to me, and you do You do it the way that you want to do it, but I actually almost didn't go vegan because people were so like in my face about like, oh, I'm a murderer,
Mm.
and it made me not want to be around those people. So I didn't listen to them.
I think this is almost true of any ideology.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Socio-political, nutrition, there's lots of different outlets in our space. And you and I have had private conversations in different contexts. I believe bad faith actors,
Yeah.
bullies, narcissists,
Yeah.
um, people with nefarious intent show up in spaces and adopt ideologies that actually give them a shield
Yes.
and a cudgel to then be the biggest assholes in the fucking universe and gain status,
Yeah.
all while being protected by that umbrella. And
Yeah.
I would love for you to comment on that through the bad behaviors that show up maybe in some of the loudest voices in the vegan space. So that way the person listening who may be interested like you've been in the past or just wants to understand better knows how to separate those bad faith actors from the genuine people like yourself.
I think the things you want to look out for. Number one, are they selling a product? Right. Now, listen, I've written books, so I have a product, but I'm also not trying to, I guess, convince anybody of anything. I'm just trying to put information out there. Um, but if somebody's selling a product or a supplement or a book or a, whatever, a program, you need to look a little further. It doesn't just because they have a product doesn't mean that they are, acting in bad faith.
Mm.
But sometimes it does. Sometimes like they are pushing a certain dogma to, so that's one thing. Another thing is they're telling you that their way is the only way. We're a human element. There isn't one way that's the only way for anything. And I think that's important. Going to extremes, right? Um, you know, this is going to kill you. No, it's probably not going to kill you. Or your doctor doesn't want you to know about this. And your doctor probably wants you to know about it if it's going to help you, so there's things like that. So I think there are things to look out for sure, but it can be tricky because a lot of people use science
Mm.
at the cherry pick and they make it sound really good and really convincing, like so convincing. And if you don't double check, and most people aren't going to double check, right? If you don't double check what they're telling you and you just take it at face value, you're just going to be like, well, they seem really smart. So I'm just going to go with that, you know?
I feel like a good illustration of this, and I mentioned this to Dr. Matthew Nagra, who was on not too long ago. And again, there's another episode. That one went really deep into, vegan-based nutrition. Actually debunked a lot of the myths about, uh, and we can get into the protein side of stuff about how like a lot of people traditionally believe that plant-based proteins were inferior. But
Yeah.
the documentary Game Changers, now I think he was fairly bullish on it, but I mean, I think there were a lot of misleading claims in that. And two, if I understand this correctly, it was largely funded by, I mean, shit, I can't remember if James Cameron was involved in it. And the
Mhm.
guy owns or isn't heavily involved in a vegan
Yeah.
protein company, right?
Yeah.
So
And they
there you
have
go.
skin in the game. They want you to be vegan for whatever reason. They have skin in the game, and fear sells. Fear sells really well. Fear sells in politics. Fear sells in nutrition. Fear sells everywhere. Fear is a very, very good way to get people to buy into your product. The thing that Game Changers said that was quite truthful is yes, you can be a great athlete as a vegan. Being vegan does not make you a great athlete,
Mm.
right? So I think that's an important distinction, right? There's no benefit in athletics to being vegan. There's also no detriment that's been shown to date anyways.
Mm.
It's something that's just like, yeah, you can do it and you'll be fine. That's it. There's no evidence that shows that veganism is detrimental to strength or endurance or anything like that. There's sometimes some evidence that it's not great evidence, but some evidence that sometimes it can make you recover better or, maybe run a little faster. But I don't really buy into that evidence. It's not real strong. But yeah, most of the evidence just shows like, yeah, if you're vegan and you're eating a protein equated diet and you're eating the right nutrients, you're fine. You're not going to have trouble. One issue, however, is that a lot of vegans have trouble getting in enough calories
Mm.
to support an extremely athletic lifestyle. You have to eat a lot of food because a lot of vegan food, if you're not like, if you're doing fatty foods like avocado, nuts, seeds, those will help increase calories more quickly. But if you are burning like 7,000 calories a day or whatever, it's going to be really harder to do that on a vegan diet than with an omnivorous diet.
Do you believe it might be harder for someone, especially a really high level performance athlete or someone who's trying to make sure their nutrition is dialed in? I guess it's challenging enough anyway. I don't imagine doing that within the framework and limitations of being vegan. Is that
Yeah.
even more challenging again, do you think?
I mean, to a point. Like when you're used to it, you're used to it, and you learn over time how to do things. But at the beginning, absolutely, because you have to learn. You have to learn what your body needs if you're not going to have this other thing in your life, right? If you're not having meat, you have to learn what your body needs to replicate that, and you will learn over time, and it becomes easier. It's easier in cities than it is in rural areas. So there's a lot of it's easier if you supplement than if you choose not to supplement, right? That it's easier if you eat fake meat than if you don't eat fake meat.
Mm.
So there's a lot of things there. Mhm.
What about calcium in bones for vegans? I think there's a belief that it's harder to get calcium and that potentially that could lead to, greater risk of bone loss. And I know that's a huge concern right now, especially for women and postmenopause.
Yeah. I so calcium is one of those things that oxalic acid can bind calcium. So if you're eating a lot of green vegetables, which are high in calcium, sometimes they also bind some of that calcium, make it harder to absorb.
Mm.
Um, Calcium is not the only thing for bone strength, right?
Oh,
We also need magnesium. We also need resistance training. So there's a lot of factors involved with bone strength that it's not 100% calcium dependent.
but even still, is it challenging to get enough calcium for the average vegan?
It can be, yeah. That's one of the things that vegans are often deficient in. And so
Uh,
you may need to supplement. Again, talk to your doctor about calcium supplementation because some are better than others. There's different types of calcium, things like that. So
okay. I mentioned the protein side earlier. So, um, one of the myths was that all proteins are created equal. This is from an old article you wrote.
mm,
So, what matters here? And I know, again, I referenced the episode with Dr. Matthew Nagra, and I know he went into depth in here, but
yeah.
what do you want people to know about vegan based protein?
So the thing about protein in a vegan diet, so most people need anywhere from 1.2 to, 2.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Generally 1.6 is kind of the sweet spot. And for a
Mm.
lot of people above 1.6, it's got diminishing returns. That said, um, vegan vegan food all has all the amino acids. It's just a matter of how much of it you're getting, right?
Mm.
And the big thing for muscle growth is leucine. And a lot of vegan diets may be a little bit more deficient in leucine than an animal-based diet. So we have to be a little bit more attentive to that. So a vegan diet, a vegan protein, and you add leucine to your protein, you're going to probably get better benefits than if you don't, right? So that's one thing. Interesting. There was an interesting meta-analysis on this very recently. I think it was like July it came out, where they looked at non-soy based diets because they wanted to see like other source, because a lot of the research that's been done has been done on soy. So they wanted to see like like how people respond with other types of protein, and what they found was that the muscle growth was not quite as good as the animal based protein, but the difference wasn't really that big. It was a small difference, but it was a difference. It was a significant enough difference to
Mm.
know that it was that vegans, when in a non-soy based diet, did not gain as much muscle mass as omnivores. Take that for what it's worth. People who ate a soy-based diet do not seem to have that issue. The soy protein like seem to be equated. And then the difference is just like so small. So it's not really like a huge deal,
Hmm.
but it's something to be aware of. Interestingly, in that study, the uh, the results were, I want to say, it was a bigger effect in younger people than older people, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mhm.
Um, but another thing about that study is there were no differences in strength, no
Mm,
difference in performance. So even though the muscle mass was a little like, some difference in muscle mass, the strength was the same. So,
mm.
mhm.
Is this one of those places where you actually might recommend BCAAs for someone? Would that be a
Not
good
on their
solution?
own, not on their
Okay.
own. Taking BCAAs by themselves doesn't really have any effect. You have to take them with protein.
Okay.
Yeah. In order for them to have an effect. But yeah, I mean, you could, because that'll help increase the leucine content.
Mm, okay, fair. So let's say like someone was literally looking for leucine and they consumed it with a meal. And I mean, as you said, all
The
vegan-based
protein.
sources of protein do
Yeah.
have a complete profile. It's just they may not have a lot of some amino
Yeah.
acids.
That should help you hit your leucine threshold a little bit better. Mhm.
But I guess you, let's say, encourage someone to have a vegan-based protein, maybe plant pea proteins or some of the other ones. Would that
You
be a
know, I
better
think
choice?
I think the big thing is, number one, have a wide variety of protein sources. That's going to be a lot better than if you only eat lentils. The wide variety of protein sources means that the plant proteins are going to complete each other. By the end of the day, you're going to have a much more complete
Mm,
composite of your protein. The other thing is probably, as a vegan, you might want to eat a little bit more protein than what is recommended for an omnivore, just to be on the safe side. It's not going to hurt you, and it might help you.
mm.
So rather than aim for 1.6, maybe you go for 1.8, maybe you go for 2, you know, just to be to be on the safe side. It's not going to hurt you, and it might help you.
Do you find that getting enough protein is more challenging with a vegan-based diet to also not overconsume on calories? Because,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, so are there any protein sources that you try to encourage people, hey, this is a really good idea to include more of these food stuffs you mentioned, soy a bunch of times.
Mhm.
And do you want
And
to even do like the debunk the soy myths?
yeah, so soy's got a bad rap. And most of the myths out there have been debunked pretty well. It's not going to affect male fertility, unless you're like, if you're eating just insane amounts, but nobody's eating that much protein. I mean, that's that much soy. Um, and it may have a protective effect on for breast cancer.
Mm,
It might have a protective, kind of a lessening effect on menopausal symptoms for a lot of women.
mm,
Um, but yeah, it's not feminizing for men, but it is a common allergen. So if you don't feel good when you eat it, don't eat it.
okay.
That's it. Mhm. I mean, if you want to think about it from a practical perspective, people in Asia eat a fair amount of soy and they do not have a population problem.
Well, I could go on a tangent there about birth rates in Korea, but that's way outside the scope of this. Yeah. But classically speaking, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant to that point.
Yep.
Are there any other food options? I mean, I know you mentioned lentils. People often will say beans. Are there any other
Uh,
things that you want to point people to?
Seitan. Um, there's a product called meaty that I like a lot that's made from mushroom root. And I like that one a lot. It's low in calories, high in protein. And it's a complete protein, which is cool. Beans and rice together, you don't have to eat them at the same time, but beans and rice, beans and wheat, beans and corn all make a complete protein. Soy is very, very high quality protein. Seitan, if you make it with bean flour or you buy it with bean flour, so it's not just wheat gluten, but it's wheat gluten plus bean flour, you have that beans and wheat in one place. That's a much higher quality protein source. Um, and a lot of people like they don't want you to like they're like, I don't want to eat like the fake meats. And I think that you're really doing yourself a disservice because it's a very convenient source of protein.
Mm,
People are like, well, I don't want to eat the processed foods. Processed
mm,
food, listen, like as soon as you take the apple off the tree, you have processed your apple, right? If you're cooking your food, you're processing your food. If you're chewing your food, you're processing your food. So it's kind of like, what are we talking about? Where are you drawing the line with processing, right? And I think when people are talking about processing, what they're concerned about is having something where the nutrition is stripped out of it completely.
Mm,
That's a whole nother story, talking about ultra processed,
mm.
foods. There isn't evidence that I am aware of that shows that eating fake meat products is particularly detrimental to people's health. Now, one issue they may have is that they do tend to be high in sodium. If you're sodium sensitive, that could cause an issue for you.
Mm.
If you have an allergy to soy or to wheat, those are the two things that are very common in those products, then they may not be great for you. But as a general rule, they're a convenient source of protein. They taste good. There's nothing wrong with them if you want to include them.
I alluded to this earlier, but is vegan nutrition more expensive?
Can be, for sure. Um, I think it also depends on how far you want to take it and where you want to shop. But if you go like to the Asian stores, you can find soy products that are cheaper. If you make things yourself, if you have the time to do that, which time is a premium, it depends on how convenient you want to make things, and it depends. I do a lot of frozen vegetables because it is,
Mm-mm.
and they tend to be more nutritious after about 5 days. They're cheaper. There's no waste. Um, and you can buy them in the dollar store, which is nice. Like if you want to. So yeah, I have a freezer full of frozen veg. And tofu can be a very cheap source of protein. Beans, very cheap source of protein. Obviously, whole grains like brown rice, like whole wheat bread, you can get at the dollar store. So you just have. It depends on what you want to eat. But you can do it. You can do it on the cheap. You just have to be real careful.
Because, as you said earlier, meat is actually expensive. And I think on average, it's probably the most expensive thing outside of, I mean, obviously, there's premium branded based all kinds of food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, of course, and I feel like you were going to allude to, with where you shop,
Yeah.
no one needs to shop organic, right? Organic is a marketing label. There's no evidence to support the fact that organic has better health outcomes. That's correct, right?
No. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, organic, listen, it just means you're using a different type of pesticide, right?
Mm.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's a better pesticide.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay. What are some of the benefits of progressively moving to more towards plant-based nutrition? Because I mean, there's vegan is the end of a spectrum in theory, and as you said, there's different like degrees and some moral policing there. But we have vegetarianism, but ultimately there's eating less meat, less red meat,
Mhm.
less saturated fat, which I think is probably one of the most important things now that we're comfortable understanding. So yeah, so what are some of the benefits of progressively, including more vegetables, less meat?
There are studies that show that you have the all cause mortality tends to be lower the
Mm,
less meat you eat. The cardiovascular disease tends to be lower. Body weight tends to be lower. Body fat tends to be lower. Um, and there are cognitive benefits as well.
mm,
So there are a lot of benefits to going with a plant-based diet. Obviously, there are environmental uh, benefits to it as well. Meat is not awesome for the environment. Um, and listen, look, there's going to be always people who are going to be like, um, you saying, sorry, my brain is just not working right now. But there's always going to be people saying things like, "Oh, look at all the bugs you're killing when you're mowing the field." But there's always going to be detractors and people trying to like poke holes in it.
mm.
You have to do what feels good to you. But yeah, there are a lot of health benefits to going plant-based that have been proven over and over and better for the planet as a general rule. Inflammatory, like if you're now, I'm going to give you an example. My sister's ex-husband
Mm.
decided to go vegetarian, but he doesn't eat vegetables. So he went on like a Doritos and potato chips diet, essentially. You're not going to get a lot of health benefits from that. So the health benefits from the plant-based diet also come with eating more plant foods. So more vegetables, more whole grains, more fruits, more beans, things like that, healthy fats. All of those things are going to support your better health. And so I think that's part of it is that when people are going towards a plant-based diet, they tend to eat more of those things. So that makes a big difference.
And I would assume if you're consuming more of that, you're getting more fiber, which usually leads to better gastrointestinal
Yes.
cancer, colon cancer type outcomes.
And you asked about mental health. Having a healthy gut is related to lower rates of
Mm.
anxiety, depression. So eating a wide variety of fiber foods. A lot of people ask me, well, can I just take a fiber supplement? I mean, you can, but you're not going to get the benefits of eating the fiber foods. Those are the most nutrient dense foods out there. So yeah, you can take a fiber supplement if that's the only thing you're willing to do, but you're really going to be better off getting lots of fruits and veggies, whole grains, beans, things like that.
You mentioned the vegetables earlier.
Yeah.
I keep frozen vegetables in the house, lots of bags of it. I get it at
Yes.
Costco. I find pretty inexpensive.
Mhm.
As you said, they keep for a long time, super
Yep.
nutritious.
Mhm.
I really like them, right?
Yeah.
And I later in the evenings, because I try not to keep things around that I will snack on. And, I eat plenty of calories in a day. So I don't have like that much leeway for snacky type stuff in the evening. And trust me, if I have there's a type of cheese, this stuff I got at Costco, and this stuff is absolutely lethal for me. I struggle to control not eating. I will stand there or sit down and eat 2/3 of a huge block of this stuff in one sitting because it's that delicious to me. So like, I can't have this stuff around. And I
Yeah.
will indulge once every several months as a like, okay, cool. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I want it. I have to be
Yeah.
really careful about the narratives spitting there.
Yeah.
But what I do is I'll microwave a couple of cups of frozen veggies in the
Mhm.
evening, and I really enjoy it. It's filling, and I
Yeah.
know it's nutritious, and I feel honestly really good about it.
Yeah.
And it's become a valuable tactic if I feel hungry later in the evenings.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's my dinner most nights. It's just me here. So like I don't need to impress anybody. So I just usually just take a whole bag of frozen veggies and a protein, and that's my dinner just about every night.
Mm.
And it's easy. I vary the veggies like a lot. So it's not, I don't get bored. I vary the protein. I have another protein I really like. There's a company, I keep forgetting if it's Big Mountain or Blue Mountain. I think it's Big Mountain Foods. They make a fava bean tofu. You can make tofu out of any bean, by the way, but it's got a ridiculous amount of like the whole package is something like 200 calories and like 50 grams of protein or something like that. And I'll take a whole package of that and just crumble it up and throw it in. Um, it's good. It works. You
Do you
know.
have that?
Do I have it?
Do
I
you
do.
have it with a nice Chianti?
A nice Chianti. I do. Yes.
I really hope some people get that reference. If you don't, you can DM me, okay? If you do, DM me, please. All
I've
right.
never even seen the movie and I got the reference.
Good. All right. It's a Hannibal Silence of the
Yeah.
Lambs movie sequence thing. Okay. Last question. Can vegan diets become restrictive?
Of course, you're by nature a vegan diet is restrictive. You're restricting yourself when you are on a vegan diet. So yes. Now, any diet can be restrictive. It depends on what it is you're trying to do. If you're like, well, I'm going to go vegan and I'm also not going to eat processed foods, whatever that means to you. So no vegan meats, no bread. I don't want to eat carbohydrates. Some people just like demonize. We've been demonizing carbohydrates for how long now? So yeah, I don't want to eat bread. Or it can be like, I want to go vegan, but I have a soy allergy. Well, that's going to restrict you a whole lot. I have a gluten allergy. That's going to restrict you a whole lot. So yeah, of course, any diet can be restrictive. It just depends on the parameters you're putting on it. But a vegan diet is starting out as a restrictive diet. And then if you're putting more restrictions on that, it's going to get worse. So yeah, raw vegan is super restrictive and not a lot of science showing that it's, like, why would you, don't do that to yourself, please. Yeah. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Just Bite Me Meals. I work long days and I won't compromise my client experience or sacrifice my workout, sleep, or nutrition. So I needed a quality and reliable meal prep service so I could save time on cooking and shopping and have more time for the stuff that matters. Net out the cost of groceries and the service isn't as much as you might think, and regular impulsive food delivery apps, eating out, that costs way more anyway. I get more meal variety and less dishes to clean, and I've been referring clients to Just Bite Me Meals for a long time, and I recently started ordering myself. Food is great. The beef brisket tacos are my favorite so far. And there's a lot of menu choice. Your calories and macros are listed. The portions are great. You can order custom meals. They deliver to your door, or you can pick up from their storefront. And I'm sorry to listeners outside of Alberta, but Just Bite Me Meals is currently just in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Ordering from Just Bite Me Meals made my life easier instantly. And you can get 10% off on all your orders using my code, Andrew Coates Fitness, all caps, on their website. That's Andrew Coates Fitness, all capitals, or go to the link and the code in the show notes. Do you find, at least anecdotally, some people who might be vulnerable to disordered eating behavior or have eating disorders may gravitate to vegan nutrition? I mean, they're going to find a way one way or the other, but will they sometimes gravitate there as a more ethical and socially acceptable, morally
Yes,
acceptable way to, engage in, eating disorders?
100%. A lot of the people. So first of all, I grew up around anorexia. My mom was anorexic, and I grew up with it in my house, so I saw it. But a lot of people will use veganism or a diet like that as an excuse. They'll say they have a food allergy, whatever, as an excuse to not eat it, right? And so I can't have what you're having because I'm vegan. I'm not going to have it. Or I can't have what you're having because I'm allergic to wheat. I have a gluten allergy, so I'm just not going to eat any of what you're. So yeah, absolutely. Veganism is used a lot to support why somebody can't eat something, or eating a lower calorie diet.
But I guess that's not an argument against exploring it, and nor is it an argument to, like, all of a sudden your friend has decided to go vegan and you're like, does that person have an eating disorder?
You'll know if it's an eating disorder. Like if you're paying enough attention, you'll know that there's something wrong there. But going vegan doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has an eating disorder. When I was 5 years old, we had a bird bath. I was taking bugs out and saving them. Like I've always been going in this direction. There was really never a question that I would end up here, I think, if you looked at the way I lived my life.
I was sitting in my hot tub, oh God, a month and a half ago. There were ladybugs everywhere, and some of them were actually getting into the tub. And so I was like scooping out and saving these ladybugs for my hot tub. So
You're attracting the ladies to the hot tub.
And I mean, maybe there's something where like ladybugs are disproportionately cuter than other bugs, and therefore you're motivated to save them, which is sort of you could look at that in a negative way, but guess what? It's like a living thing, right? Would I have been as conscientious about mosquitoes? Fuck no. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's been a lot of mosquitoes around here, and I clapped a couple. I didn't used to do it, but they've been biting me up, and I can't handle it.
Fair. All right. That's a different moral argument. All right, everybody can get you on Instagram. Now, I know your Instagram, you don't tend to post a ton of fitness stuff. A lot of it's like your rock music and, other sort of life pursuits, but they can get you at the numeral 5. So it's 5 feet of Fury 1, but it's numeral 5 FT of Fury 1. Okay.
Yeah.
You'll be easy to find. I follow you if someone wants to search you or search you by your name. Obviously your books. So where can people get your books?
All of them are on Amazon. 2 of them are also like so Pleasure Not Meeting You. I wrote that book because I felt like it was a book that needed to be written, and I didn't think anyone was going to buy it, so I self-published it. So the only place you can get that is on Amazon, unless somebody's reselling it somewhere. But the other 2 got picked up by a publisher, so you can get them through Human Kinetics, and they also have wide distribution in bookstores, so you can buy it at most online bookstores.
I know Lee Boyce would love it if you guys went and got, hold on, where's my copy? Just give me a copy right here. If for video watchers.
Yes.
There's you and Lee, and I mean, you can see why the
my
2
twin
of
brother.
you, why you guys were just right to write that book. So, straight training for all body types, guys. Anyway, go check it out. Okay. My copy. Cool. And guys, please go and follow and check out what Melody's doing. You are one of my favorite people in the industry. It's always great to see you when we get to hang out at events. And yes, I've also had your famous brother on my podcast not too long ago as well. So yes, Brad is your brother. He did a really good masterclass on muscle hypertrophy. And if you've been enjoying these episodes as well, Mel, you've been on as a guest before. Now, your previous appearances are more about the career-based side of stuff for the old episodes. But if someone wants to go into the library, there's more of you in back episodes. So thanks again. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.